All right. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We had some technical issues behind the scenes, um, but thank you again for joining us, and sorry to keep you waiting. Um, Sharon Pitts will be joining us in a little bit. Greg's still working on those technical issues, so you might see her pop up at some point. If not, she'll come in and we'll be able to hear her later. A few people are still joining right now, so I'll give it a minute. But hope everyone enjoyed their Mother's Day, and hopefully everyone is enjoying this hopefully soon to be spring weather that we'll have for a while. So today's certainly nice. Um, Again, today's May 12th. Thank you. Tuesday afternoon meetings, we try to update you on specifics. This week we did have a series of questions come in, which we appreciate. And so we'll get to those questions later. So we'll just start off with sort of some of the things we know. Governor Weld in his press conference yesterday, everyone I'm sure heard of the 4-step plan that he sees Massachusetts going through, which is the START, cautious, vigilant, and then the new normal. And certainly everyone's question and speculation is about what the new normal is and which phase really do our day programs fall into. And we did have a couple of meetings today with ADDP funding source, provider group, with a second meeting at DDS with of course they're our funding source for the DDS services. And so the meetings were good. The ADDP meeting, Mass Health has really helped us to be able to continue the telehealth services as well as the virtual learning, and we've had a lot of positive success with the virtual learning and feedback on that. So we will continue that, and that is great news. And again, I hope everyone is participating in that. I did jump over, and I shouldn't have. The care center actually closed today at 12. We had the last person who was positive in any of our NuPath facilities be cleared today, and so they went home at 12 o'clock today. We are waiting on some results, and Sharon will get into those more specifics and tell you about plans of other things we have coming up to address some of the other houses that might have some concern to be tested. So we'll go into that with her, but I guess I wanted to talk about the biggest plan and how that affects us, and that's really what we're ramping up towards, and what we're talking about is what is sort of the phase that we're ready to go to next, and what's the time frame for that. Certainly we know that our no walls groups as well as our employment staff would be probably the easiest to get back to some type of semblance of normalcy. And so we're going to look to really have a plan for that once we hear all the details around the different phases. We talked with DDS today, and DDS, they pretty much, they didn't say it with 100% certainty, but it was more like 99.9% certain that the opening of day programs, the day habilitations, as well as the day programs will not be taking place on the 18th, and probably won't take place until the third phase, which is vigilant. So that just means we are still out a little whiles before those day programs can open. As you know, we did a pop-up site at our location in Westford last week. That was very successful. There's been a couple more pop-up sites for staff and individuals. And our region of DDS, and the Northeast region, still continues to see high rates of positive cases, and also more deaths than any of us would like to see. And so they're still very cautious in their approach to this. And so those are sort of some general things that are going on, and what the topic of conversation is, and we'll get into more of what we're thinking a little bit on this webinar about the reopening and just things we're looking into, and certainly any questions you have, send those in now, and we'll be able to get to them in the second half of this. Greg, do you want to try to bring Sharon in right now? Hopefully the technical issues we've worked out behind the scenes. Again, I want to say thanks to all the people who've sent emails and well wishes, and hey, nice, we can see you, Sharon.
Right.
And so I just I agree that, you know, everyone's been so supportive and so kind, and just very supportive of our staff, giving us huge thank yous and feedback from the roles that the staff have been playing. And again, we wouldn't be able to do any of this without them. They've been just stepping up more and more, as we've had the one house where we had to have the positive cases quarantine, as well as opening the center and closing it. And so so Sharon, I did announce that we closed the center today at noon.
Yep, which is great.
And so that is our last positive case. Is that correct?
Yes, we have one person still outstanding, waiting for the results that were tested on Sunday. So they told us, you know, after 24 hours we should know. We haven't been informed yet, so we're still waiting. We did have somebody else that was tested on Sunday, I believe, and that came back negative. So so that was great. So that's all we have out right now.
Are you still seeing the 24 hours to 48 hours return time for those tests?
It all depends where you go on, and the mobile testing takes way longer. This week was a little better with that, since they added that app. Some people, but I think it's doesn't matter if you were all tested on one particular day. It depends how the lab puts the batches in, where you fall, because you might end up in a batch, even though you were tested on Monday, you might end up in a batch that's going in on Tuesday to have results be looked at. So so we actually still waiting for a couple of people from the last Monday's tests to find out their results. A couple of staff. So yeah. So right now we're continuing to put in the houses for mobile testing, because we find that's a little easiest on some of the individuals. Cuts down a lot on the stress, especially the more challenging people. So we did put we're waiting on one of the houses to get a testing site. Actually, a testing time. Sorry. What else do you want to talk about? I did want to talk about a couple of things that are just general, not but there's been a couple of like scam things that are going around, that people are getting text on their phone that they both, one of them says it's from the Department of Health, and the other one says it's from who's the other one from? Department of Health. One of them's from the Department of Health, saying that you've either tested positive or that you've come in contact with someone that's positive, and that you need to self-quarantine. And for more information, you can go to this particular website. So you don't want to do that. They're not sending any text like that. And the other one is telling people that that you need to complete a online COVID test that's mandatory, so that you can get your stimulus money. And that is also another scam. So just, if you haven't heard about that, just be aware of that. Don't click on any of those websites.
Well, first off, that's horrible that anyone would you know, with the gravity of this situation, that's the resort that people are taking, and the avenue that people are taking is sad. But that's great news. Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Maybe just talk about our protocols for the staff coming into the house. I know that some other questions came in on that, and I know this, you know, a smaller group, we talk about the PPE and protocols and all that. And so you want to touch on that?
The protocols for the staff continues to be the same thing. It's been since we closed the day program. They come in the morning. We have PPE available, so they wear their mask. They have their temp taken before even start of shift. They're aware to, if they they're not feeling well, or if their temp's taken and it's elevated 99.5 or higher, they need to go home, and we'll replace that staff with someone that's well. We've assisted people to get tested if they just want to get tested. We have gloves available, masks, shields for when anybody's doing any personal care. So shields are in every house.
Gowns.
Everything. Yes,
Yeah.
we have everything that's in place, and staff, for the most part, being very good with that. We'll see once in a while. We'll see pictures of somebody outside, maybe not having their mask on. I don't know if that's just because they feel like they're outside, but we still continue to make sure that people are maintaining their social distance, and if they're not, they absolutely have to be wearing the masks. So.
Good. Yeah, thank you. I know that many different emails came into me about whether we were having people still practice, wearing a mask and before entering the house, and if we were still taking temperatures. And so I think, all the time I sort of go to you guys, our healthcare professionals, our nurses, and certainly allow you to address all of those things. And so thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, and I can also tell you, I mean, just to continue with that, every house has a nurse attached to it, one or two. Some nurses have a couple of houses, but the nurses are calling the houses every day, twice daily, more if it's required. If something is out of the ordinary or whatever, they'll make an additional phone call or whatever. They're checking on those temps. They're checking on behaviors, appetite, whether people are moving their bowels, urinating, everything. Everything's being watched every day. It's Monday through Sunday. And like you've said a million times, there is no regular work week.
Right.
Every day is the same. So and that's continued, and it will continue till we finally move on from this coronavirus.
Right. Another question that came into me that while you're on here, we didn't have a chance to talk about ahead of time, so I apologize, but I guess I think you're equipped to answer it. People were wondering, we have the people that test positive and showed no signs, and then we have people, the idea of what is true signs of having this, right? Temperature, we know 100.3 is what they set to say, but we know that so many other things are indicators. And so do you want to go over some of those? I think it would just be helpful.
Sure. Some of the symptoms that people may come across, an elevated temp. It might just be a temp that's why we're taking everybody's temp, a couple times a day. It might be that you just spike a temp today of, 100.6. And then tomorrow morning you're back down to your 98.3. That spike is almost always indicative of a positive case. So in elevated temperature, a cough, sore throat, you have to remember that it's allergy season as well. So you have to be able to define that for yourself if you're somebody with an allergy. Loss of taste or smell. So some people are smelling different things in the morning just to see if they still have it, because that's something you might not really notice. So loss of taste or smell, the temp, the cough, the sore throat, fever.
Was this? I thought in our last, well, maybe this was at the end of last week, you mentioned something about just diarrhea and real stomach issues.
Oh yeah, the GI issues. Yeah, GI issues. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Also, you could have just like a weird rash. That's another weird thing that's come across over the last month, that someone might just show up with a weird rash. So there are some dermatologic issues. Little kids they're finding red toes. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with this. The more it goes on, the more cases that the doctors see, the more information we acquire on it. But yeah, it's a crazy virus.
And something, I don't know if questions were posed, have been presented to you on this, but I know that some staff had concerns that if they went to these pop-up sites and went to some of these pop-up sites, whether their health insurance would be billed. And it's my understanding that DDS and Mass Health are picking up all of those expenses. And so
Yes.
certainly if
And
that
they
was
don't,
a,
yes, yeah, so they're not charged for it. And it's also that they don't have to have symptoms to get tested. They might just be somebody that feels like, you know what, so much time's gone by. I really want to know, am I positive, or am I one of those people that are, you know, asymptomatic? So you can be tested if you want to be tested. You just have to sign up for one of those sites. We can do add-ons as well. So if you come up, there's a site tomorrow or whatever, and you really feel like you want to be tested, we've got the okay to do add-ons without pre-registering. So
good. And sort of the last question I have before we open it up to some of the questions, and if you want to stay on those, you know what I mean, while I answer the questions and add any detail, that'd be awesome. We heard today that DDS is not recommending people who have tested positive once to go get retested, and that's what the Board of Health, as well as the DPH, is telling them.
yes.
And so I know that internally we've had staff that have tested positive in time late past, and they still test positive. You want to just touch on that for a second?
Yeah. So in fact, we had a staff that was positive back in March, and then just wanted to just get tested again just to see. And that person happens to be somebody that's been working from home this whole entire time, but tested positive again. And so I was talking with EPH, one of the epidemiologists, to ask that question. And that's one of the reasons why they've changed the criteria for symptomology as opposed to positive or negative, because you may still have some of the viral load, which they're calling it. You may still have that you could have it for 5, 6, 8 weeks. They don't really know how long people are carrying that. But if you don't have the symptoms that you had when you started, then after 7 days of it's 10 days total that you need to from the day of onset of symptoms until you can get out of quarantine. But it's the last 3 days have to be no Motrin, no Tylenol, and no symptoms whatsoever. So it's important for people that find themselves to be positive to write things down, take their temperature daily, write it down. If you take Tylenol because you have a temperature, write it down, so that when Board of Health asks you those questions near the 10th day, that you're gonna be able to give that information as to what your symptoms were and when's the last time you had any symptoms, because that's Board of Health is the one that's really overseeing everyone's care, and they're the ones that determine if you're able to be out of quarantine. So,
Right.
so anybody in our house that's been positive, we've been in touch with the Board of Health on every one of them.
Right. Good. Thank you. Thank you. Greg, I don't know if you want to, we have some questions that came in through email, and I think Greg is going to sort of read the questions for everyone who's signed on at home, so that they'll know the questions, and then I'll try to give a short answer. And if you want to certainly add anything afterwards, please feel free to. Or if I, like I have in the past, misspeak, certainly correct me. So Greg, you want to start out with the questions?
Sure. I'm actually going to start. One parent had a number of questions, but just piggybacking on the testing answer that Sharon provided. The question was, will all group home staff, both relief and regular staff, be required to be tested and regularly monitored before working with clients? And also, will new staff employees be required to be tested before being hired? So if you don't want to answer that one, I think you already did, but I'll throw that back to you.
Okay, yeah, I believe we already did answer that. So people everybody's monitoring their symptoms daily, monitoring their temperature daily. If they're working for us, you're getting your temp taken every day. requiring people to test. You cannot mandate someone to be tested. EDS would love everyone, and that's something that we're working towards. They would love every individual and all staff to be tested at least by the end of July. So we are working towards that. But you can't. It's like vaccinations. You can't make people be vaccinated. But we are doing everything in our power to keep everybody safe and to monitor everybody's symptoms. So.
Yeah. And I know that part of the DDS call that we were on this morning, and it was a topic last week, was the idea that some agencies wanted, to have all their staff tested, so that all their staff needed to be tested before working a shift. And then we know that some of those agencies, just shortly after having tested all their staff, had some positive cases, and staff needed to go be tested again, even though they originally tested negative. And so what the conversation was today for people at home was that the desire, if a person wants to get tested, we want to give them the ability to get tested and have the access to get tested. Or if they feel like they have symptoms, we want them to get tested, and that's where we will guide them to. But we can't force somebody to get tested, nor really do we know the benefit of having someone get tested with no symptoms and then going into work and then sometime later having symptoms. And so really, I think that is I know that is a hot topic, many different aspects. And so thank you for clarifying that question.
Is a moment in time, because you could be tested today, come back negative, but in 2 days you come across someone that you've been exposed to and you're positive, but you don't really know it because it's not a clean bill of health. It just means the day that you were tested, you were negative. And that's why they really switched everything to symptomology. Do you have any symptoms? So really monitoring your own health is the number one key to this, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, someone referenced it today, and I wrote it down because I thought it was a good way to look at it. It almost gives you like a false assurance. False, you get this clean bill of health, and really all that doesn't mean that you can relax your wearing mask and practicing PPE and social distancing and all of that. That doesn't mean that whatsoever. Just having tested negative. So good, thank you. Greg, you want to fire away?
Sure. A couple other questions from the same parent were related to if we'll require thorough hand washing, which of course the answer is obviously yes. And will staff be required to wear masks? And I feel like we've answered that a number of times. The answer is yes. And then the final question there was parent is concerned or talking about people in the houses traveling in the same vehicle, and what is kind of the plan for clients to be able to take some type of trips where they will not all be riding in the same vehicle. So I'm paraphrasing the question, but that's basically it.
Okay.
Well, currently we're anybody that's going out for even if it's just for a ride, just to get out of the house, we're maintaining our 6 feet. So that means you might just have one staff and one individual, depending on the size of the vehicle. At the current time, I don't know if that will change as we get antibody testing and as things progress. But I'm sorry, Dan, I know you were going to talk and I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect, because I think that this is part of the long, the larger discussion that the state is having, right? Because Governor Baker has set up a separate task force to talk about going back into society for executive health of human services and how that translates to our programs and to all programs. And so, as you mentioned, if people are going out on outings or for a ride or something like that, that it is less people, want as few as possible to make sure that we're keeping the 6 feet. But I think the larger thing, which we can't answer right now, is as we move to say, cautious phase, which is maybe the whole group home being able to go out and do an activity. How will we address that? Will everyone have to require to wear a mask, and will we allow them all to go in the van because they are a tight social network? Because if you look at some other states, that's what they're talking about. If you know your network, if you know your the group that you're with, so that if someone did end up showing signs and symptoms and be sick, you would be able to easily report it to those groups. So that's how sort of we think the group homes that are certainly that we serve, that's how the transportation will be for them. But then the larger question is, and no one has the answer to this, what does that mean for day programs opening up, and a 15-passenger van coming to a house, and you can't sort of use that same logic
Right.
with that. And so that's really where people are as far as vigilant, and what phase, like DDS thinking, that day programs will probably fall into the vigilant phase, which different people have speculated, well, that's not until July. And some people was expected, that won't even be ready for July. And so, but the way you answer the question is what we're doing now, because that's what we can control. When we can't control that, then that really means we're moving to the cautious phase. And I know internally that's what you and I and a few others will be talking about, is trying to really decide what our recommendations are internally for that. So, well, good. Thank you, Greg. Any other questions?
Yes, a few more. A parent took their son home for the lockdown, and they're asking if they can get him tested somewhere with the mobile testing, or perhaps somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody can reach out. I'm willing to help anybody. My cell phone number, if you're listening, that question's coming in now. It's 781-330-4641. Just call me, and I'll assist you to get that done.
Yeah.
Great.
Or, if for some reason you didn't catch that number, just reach out to your contact at NuPath, and they'll get you in contact with Sharon and Matt, and they can get you at a mobile site, or they can get you what is most convenient for you and your son. So good.
Okay, a couple more questions from the same parent. No, you touched on this, but what is the estimated start of the vigilance phase if all goes well?
Any date I would say right now is complete guess and speculation. Certainly part of the conversation, the last two conversations I were on, no one thought we'd no one was under the belief that we'd be even ready to enter the vigilant phase until till mid-July. And what that means, as far as what that means for our day programs, is still being deeply debated. Whether that means it won't be, we'll have capacity levels to how many people we can have on vans and how many people we can serve in the day programs at one time. Mass health regulation is 100 square feet per individuals for day programs. And so certainly each one of our day sites have more than 100 square feet per individual, but still that speculation is that won't be enough to continue to serve the same amount of people we've served in the past. And so unfortunately, I'm not part of Governor Baker's team in the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, but I certainly don't anticipate day programs really falling into that vigilant phase and opening anytime before July, unfortunately. But I could be wrong. I'm hoping I'm wrong. That would be the best case scenario. I tend to be wrong often, so that would be a good time to be wrong. So.
Okay, just on that note, two other questions here. One, is there a time frame for bringing our son home for a visit soon? And another parent asking, I was hoping parents could have 15-minute visits with their kids at their homes as long as parents wore masks, and asked if there was a plan or a time frame for trying to put something like that in place.
Yeah, so I don't, I'll answer those two questions and then I'll sort of leave it open a little bit, meaning I think those are some details that we need to nail down right now, and we can't really nail those down completely until we know sort of what we're okayed to do, or when we're given the discretion, given the ability to make those decisions ourselves and use our own discretion. I can tell you that the idea of visiting your son or daughter at the group homes and having 15 minutes or a time limited time frame, certainly as part of the discussion, we would love for you to come visit at the group homes and spend times. But I think what we're leaning towards is really making sure we keep that out of the group home, meaning that being out in the yard or out in another location. We're going to really look to not, unless there's a true need for people to come into the group homes. I think we're gonna push that a little further off if possible. But again, that's what we're discussing right now. I'm just telling you what seems to be what our funding source and people leaning towards, and what seems to be a good segue into getting back to some normalcy, right? Coming for a visit, practicing social distance, having your mask on, and certainly coming into the home brings it to another level. But that is certainly not etched in stone yet. Sharon, I don't know if you want to say anything
No,
related to that.
it's the same. I get it. I haven't been able to, I don't know, you probably haven't seen your parents either. I haven't been able to
Yeah.
see my mother-in-law who's 93. I see her from the door, and it's killing me, so I get it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I just wanted to add, just from Dan Harrison, who said he's going to speak more at length to this specific topic on Thursday, and he also wanted to remind folks that part of the success with keeping the numbers down and low has been the dogged adherence to this policy specifically. So just a reminder there, but he will be speaking more to that on Thursday.
Yeah, that's great. I was actually going to end on that. I know that in speaking with him, he had some thoughts and some direction that he felt strongly about. But I think we're also still really waiting additionally for some guidance from what Baker is going to loosen up come May 18th. So. All right.
Questions, guys. Thank you.
Does Dan have any other questions?
No.
No, I'm just kidding. So I want to thank everyone again. I know Dan touched on it last week and he touched on it regularly. It is not easy what we're all being asked to do. It sounds sometimes like it's easy, but it's not. And certainly, I don't know about you guys personally, but my wife and I have talked about having seen people's attitudes sort of start to change a little bit over the last week and a half, 2 weeks. And certainly, I think the length of time that this has gone on is certainly, probably leads to that. But again, we don't want to rush into anything that's going to impact, all the progress we've made, because then that second time will be much longer and things might be much more stringent. And so, we're just taking it slowly and continue to be vigilant and wear our PPE and practice social distancing.
I can say one thing to share with everybody. APH commended our agency for being so proactive and so vigilant with all our oversight and our cohort site at 147. They were very impressed by our agency, and they wanted us to be aware of that. So,
that's awesome. That's awesome. I know, DDS referenced it as well and sort of gave some kudos for that as well. And so I think a lot of smart people work here. I'm very lucky to be working with a lot of smart people, and I think the staff have been tremendous. And I think that we've asked the families to hang in there with us and tried to update them on every decision and give the rationalization around the decisions. And many times I think people try to get too smart on some decisions, where I think it just comes down to what's right and what's common sense. And so that's what we'll try to try to input into the second phase of this when we can get back to some normalcy. So. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Dan will be back Thursday, as well as Friday with the Unity Forum. And I know he did a Mother's Day celebration the other day. I heard a great deal of people enjoyed that, and I thought it was tremendous. And so, so happy Mother's Day to all of you again, and we'll talk to you on Thursday. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, Dan.
Bye. Bye. Thanks, Sharon.